Hey Merfolk fans, I'm Joe. Thanks very much for joining me today. If you'd like to support my channel, please check out the link above to my Patreon page. I'm here with the 5th and final round of a modern competitive league, currently sitting at 3-1. I could be 4-0, but a goblin opponent hit a really wild top deck. You guys probably saw that one if you're watching this league. Disappointing, but we have a chance in this game here, in this match here, to go 4-1. So let's see how it went. Whether I finished 3-2 or 4-1. I did win the die roll, which I was excited about, and this is a really nice opening hand. Opponent kept as well, so we'll play an island and pass the turn. Probably just close the graveyard for now. Okay, looks like Jund. So I guess this is a solid hand against Jund. We're gonna go Spreading Seas, not only because we want to hit this man land and take them off their colors, but we really need to hit lands. So let's draw some cards. Aether Vial is sort of a land. All right, well, they did nothing, presumably leaving up push or bolt. Let's get this Aether Vial out and hope that it sticks. I'm expecting the opponent to jam Liliana here. They do, and if they make me discard, it's going to be a pretty simple choice. And get rid of one of these Deprives. So take the Aether Vial up, and there's a land. Okay, whew. So I could just jam a Lord here, but I'm feeling like they have some removal, and Liliana can just tick down anyway, so I can slow roll my creatures a little bit, hold up a counter spell. Now, if they open up with making me discard something, I think I'm going to pitch a Lord here. Some of you guys might disagree with this choice, but there's 6 more Lords in the deck and only 2 more counter spells. I like this spot having Deprive if they go for something like Maelstrom Pulse on my Aether Vial, or Assassin's Trophy on the Aether Vial, or even just casting, you know, like Kalidas or something. I could counter it. I don't think pitching a Lord gives much information, except that I've got a lot of gas in my hand. They do have Stomping Grounds, so they could go for something like Kalidas. Instead, they go for Bloodbraid Elf into Assassin's Trophy. So I let that resolve because it gives me another land. And then you know what? I let the Bloodbraid Elf resolve, which in hindsight I probably should have countered. I think I was concentrating so hard on the Assassin's Trophy and whether I was interested in countering it or not, that I sort of forgot that I could counter the Bloodbraid Elf. We could still, of course, just bounce our land and replay it and jam Master of Waves next turn. So yeah, they really shouldn't have this Bloodbraid Elf on board. So I'm going to jam Master of Waves. We see a Ben showing up, which, you know, it's always nice, especially with opponents tapped out, to go for the loot. But in this situation, we're just trying to loot into gas like Master of Waves. So we have it in hand, so let's go ahead and jam it. That Spreading Seas is awesome synergy. So opponent's going to draw. Now they have 4 cards. Bolt on an Elemental. That's some value right there. Kolaghan's Command on an Elemental. They're going to make me discard a card, and at this point, I think I'm going to throw this Deprive away. Now, if I had deprived the Bloodbraid Elf, and they went for that line that they just did now, I would probably just pitch Ben. We've got really nice gas in hand, so still would have been correct to counter the Bloodbraid Elf. Just a misplay on my part. So the reason the opponent did that was they wanted me to get rid of Master of Waves. So they spent 3 pieces of Primo removal. Sorry, what? It's two pieces, Bolt and Kolaghan's Command, getting rid of 2 elementals, which is insane. You know, being 3-1 in this spot makes me think that, you know, this opponent knows what he's doing, but that was a really terrible line. I guess they're just really afraid of Master of Waves. So we had to sack him, and they play a tap land. They're down to 1 card in hand. They had great cards in hand, but now they don't. The Bloodbraid Elf that should not be attacks me for 3. Land is sweet, so I can play Ben, play Master of Waves, get 3 tokens instead of 2. And if Ben survives, I'm going to be able to loot if it's a productive way to use the mana. Our Confidant, land, and the opponent. Okay, the opponent's going to make me discard, which is good for them, I guess. The Lord would hurt in this spot. Ticking up Liliana, But if our top deck is bad, we've got Ben on board to let us cycle. Fortunately, the top deck was not bad. So let's go ahead and play that Lord. And yeah, we will crack in with all of our guys. We're really not afraid of the damage we'd be taking from these guys. We're sitting at 17 life. Now, it's totally possible, a reasonable line, I guess, where I could buff Ben right now, but especially in grindy matchups. Card advantage is king, and so if I draw a land next turn, I'd love to be able to cycle it, or sorry, I guess loot it away with Ben and get another draw. But currently, I'm attacking for 5 plus 6, so 11. Changing Ben to a 3/3 doesn't really change the math as things stand. So yeah, I think that the loot is more valuable than adding 1 toughness. Okay, so this Bloodbraid Elf is going to eat it in the end. Anyway. Liliana down. I attacked Liliana with the 2 Island Walkers and attacked the opponent with the Elementals. He took 2 of them and now he's down to 14. I think Dark Confidant revealed Thoughtseize, which is, pretty much the best possible thing that we could have hoped for the opponent to draw, because we have no cards in hand. Now, Trickster is a good one. I could tap down Bob and swing with the Lord, and then it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, plus 4 would be 12, right? 4, 6, plus 6 is 12. Still doesn't quite do it. So still, no real reason to adapt yet. Or rather, I should say, no real reason to commit to tapping Dark Confidant down, since the Lord doesn't actually make it a lethal attack. But it is a good spot to loot. Now, the Trickster is a pretty sweet draw, but it's possible we could have an even sweeter draw. In this particular kind of spot, something like a Deprive would actually be better than a Trickster, so that if the opponent does have some sick top deck, we could just counter it. Silvergill Adept, this is funny. This is probably the only time I'll ever throw a Silvergill Adept in the trash, but we've got what we need in hand, so we don't really need to draw more cards. So we're going to get in with all these guys again. If they want to block with Dark Confidant, that's fine. If they don't, that's also fine. We're going to go down to 3, and what did they draw off that? I forget. Let's show the game log. Oh, sometimes replays don't let me see it. It was a 2-drop that was not... Oh, I think it was a Tarmogoyf. Something like that. Or maybe, no, Scavenging Ooze. Yeah, but they're way too far behind. This thing's not going to gain them anywhere near enough life. Note that any green mana that they'd have access to at this point would come at the cost of 1 life. So net 0 with Scavenging Ooze. And I think they're dead on board with 2 cards in hand. I'm going to go ahead and tap down Scavenging Ooze, and it doesn't really matter what I draw here. Spreading Seas, decent. If the opponent's not scooping yet, I'm just going to keep playing cards. So Spreading Seas, Merfolk Trickster. I was gonna play it, but I was like, whatever, don't need to play it. So I attacked with everybody, and the opponent scooped. So even through a misplay where I should have countered Bloodbraid Elf, got there pretty easily against Jund in game 1. Spreading Seas, doing a great job, drawing cards. Actually, Benthic Biomancer, pushing a lot of damage in combination with a Lord and Island Walk. I guess, his loot was not super significant. In this case, it drew into a Silvergill, which I pitched, and then drew into another Trickster. We do like our interactive creatures in this matchup. So the draw, not super necessary, but digging is always great, as I mentioned. If I hit into like a Deprive, it would have just slammed the door that much harder on the opponent. Things were probably pretty much wrapped up in this one anyway, but I'm never going to complain about, a 1-drop that becomes a 2/2 and draws me into more cards. So really strong performance in game 1 from Merfolk. Let's see how game 2 went. Back for game 2. Let's check out the sideboard. So against Jund, I like taking out 2 AEther Vials, leaving 2 in. One of the ways that we can lose to sort of black-green decks is by getting mana screwed, and AEther Vial just provides a way to potentially let us get creatures onto the table in the event that we don't draw enough lands. It's a pretty poor top deck, but having access to Benthic Biomancer means that, we can play 2 AEther Vials and potentially loot them away if we draw them. So In this matchup, I took out all my counter magic, took out 4 Deprives and 2 Spell Pierces. Now, they can be situationally good. If the opponent doesn't know what we have in hand and they go for like a Liliana, we can Spell Pierce it. But they have a lot of hand disruption, and so odds are they're going to know about our counter magic and play around it accordingly. This makes it less than optimal, so pretty easy choices to sideboard out. So I took out 6 cards and then 2 vials, so that's 8 total. I brought in 4 relics, which is just amazing in this matchup. It hurts Tarmogoyf, it hurts Scavenging Ooze, it hurts Kolaghan's Command because sometimes they get creatures back from the graveyard with that spell. So 4 Relic of Progenitus. I brought in 2 Spellskite. It was an interesting sort of thought-provoking decision about whether Spellskite is good in this matchup or not. And I actually think it's fairly good. Master of Waves is weaker than ever, I guess, in these matchups since Assassin's Trophy has been printed. He also dies to Collective Brutality. He also dies to Fatal Push. So if we land a Master of Waves, he could be pretty vulnerable. Dies to Maelstrom Pulse. But if we have a Spellskite on board, we can potentially protect our army and close out a game, whereas otherwise the Master of Waves could have gotten removed. So 4 relics, 2 Spellskites, and then I guess 2 Dismembers is what I brought in. Really, really strong to be able to dismember a Bob. So this might look like a mulligan to some of you guys, but this is a keep for me. Merfolk Trickster represents potential removal against Tarmogoyfs, and we love having lands against mid-range, and AEther Vial's not bad. They have Planeswalkers, they have some sorcery speed removal. AEther Vial lets us play around that stuff. So it looks like the opponent's going with turn 1 Inquisition. And the fact that they took AEther Vial makes me think that the opponent is not the best, not the most talented Magic player, because I have 4 lands. They're not going to be able to do anything about my lands. And AEther Vial is not a threat by itself to the opponent. If I were them, I would have certainly taken the Dismember. Another Trickster, much better than drawing more land. At this point, we do have our lands in hand and we want to draw gas. So there's a Scavenging Ooze. I'm going to take this opportunity to just kill that thing right now. I've got the mana available. And Scavenging Ooze can get really out of hand once they start removing our creatures. It could become like an 8/8, and the opponent's life total just gets unreachable. All right, I continue to draw well. So I'm going to play this Oboro. It's one of our few outs against Choke in the matchup. Okay, so it doesn't look like we're seeing Choke this turn. So let's jam a Trickster. And another Master of Waves. Oh, these are some great draws. So Bolt on the Trickster. Not bad. I think I play another island and just pass. Overgrown Tomb tapped. Okay, so note that the Scavenging Ooze, already potentially having access to some food if I didn't remove it. Passing with 4 mana up. I can dig it. I'm going to run out this Trickster. Merfolk likes to have a clock. Opponent is going to bring the Scavenging Ooze back and kill the Trickster. So pretty good value for the opponent there. All right, it's land Master of Waves time, and if they have Choke, we're going to get wrecked, but let's hope they don't. Scavenging Ooze. Surprise. Stomping Ground untapped. Makes me think maybe they do have Choke, but they don't. Okay, so Spellskite, a timely draw. Let's go ahead and jam this guy, see what the opponent's got. All right, Assassin's Trophy on Master of Waves. Kind of cool how the Spellskite forces that rather than having to guess what the opponent has. Now, a neat thing about this was I wasn't prepared to commit this land to the table, but now that the opponent has given me another land, I can go ahead and play it and play Master of Waves. So opponent eats something with a Scavenging Ooze. That thing now, as I mentioned, is threatening to get out of control because it can eat... It already ate the old Scavenging... No, what did it eat already? I don't know. It ate something. It ate the first Master of Waves. All right, opponent is really low on cards, but they can start getting in with Scavenging Ooze. My life total's pretty high, so I'm not really prepared to block yet. Here's a Tarmogoyf. And opponent plays their last card in hand. Now that makes me... Additionally, sort of think that this opponent is not very good. Not quite sure what that land was going to do for them, but it might make me change how I might attack if I think, okay, they could have a Bolt or they could have a Kolaghan's Command. Now I know exactly what they have. They have nothing. So, Ben, pretty nice draw here. I have to say, I kind of forgot that Oboro comes back to my hand. I wasn't thinking about that. I think I do realize it soon in the game, but I didn't realize it right away, because if I did realize it right away, I would have just done it immediately. That's some amazing synergy, being able to bounce Oboro back for Benthic Biomancer. It's actually the main reason why this card is in the deck right now. You know, how incredible to be able to just loot away a land that we don't need and draw something like a Lord or a Spreading Seas. So now when the opponent attacks, I think I realized that I could adapt Ben. Unfortunately, they've drawn a card, so if I go to adapt Ben, they could go for a Bolt or something, but I do have Spellskite on board to help me. So I kind of messed this up. You're supposed to pay for Oboro with itself, but I haven't done it in a while, so I paid with an island. Hopefully that doesn't bite me, and I won't need the extra mana too much. So now I'm going to activate Adapt. Now you want to bounce the land before you activate Adapt. If you activate Adapt and you draw a card, you're going to have to discard that card. You need to have a card in hand before you activate Adapt. All right, and Ben is much better. Turned out that the extra mana wasn't particularly relevant. It's time. I'm just going to chump here with an Elemental. I really like having Spellskite on board in this spot. The opponent has 2 big creatures, which is pretty frightening, but I believe I still have 2 Master of Waves left in the deck, 4 Spreading Seas, a lot of stuff that can turn my game plan on pretty quickly. Dismember is a really cool draw, because if we check out the graveyards, the opponent has no creatures, and I have 1 creature. I'm really afraid of this Scavenging Ooze. If 1 more creature dies, that means the Scavenging Ooze gets to be a 6/6, and basically I can't deal with it for the rest of the game. So I'm going to go ahead and play Ben here and loot right away. See if something's better than Dismember. I can't really imagine what would be better. So, digging through an island, Ben once again doing amazing things. You have to think, like, what would a Curse Catcher do in this spot? What would a Mistcaller do in this spot? Do nothing. It would do nothing. What would a Spell Pierce do in this spot? If you guys are running 4 Spell Pierce, 4 Curse Catcher, 4 Mistcaller at the expense of running 4 Benthic Biomancers, it's simply a mistake, right? I think that this league has really clearly demonstrated the power of this 1-drop. It can be strong in the early game, just like Curse Catcher and Mistcaller, in the sense that it pushes damage, but it also helps us hold up counter magic. And in the end game, it's like a Silvergill Adept. I mean, this is just crazy value for a 1-drop. I would go so far as to say, I actually think it's a pretty easy point to make, that Benthic Biomancer is significantly stronger than any other insane 1-drop in Modern. What does Noble Hierarch on turn 7 when you draw it off the top of the deck? What does Champion of the Parish do? What does Goblin Guide do? I mean, it's 2 damage, I guess, with haste. So Goblin Guide, decent late game, but odds are that the opponent's going to have creatures, and you want to be drawing bolts in the end game. Goblin Guide is just going to run into a wall of creatures. Benthic Biomancer comes down, you've got 5 lands. You play it, you adapt it, you pitch an extra AEther Vial or something, and you draw into another Lord. A 1-drop that's good at the beginning of the game, that's good at the end of the game, that facilitates an entire strategy around instant speed interaction, is something that we need to be playing. So if you disagree at this point, please leave your rationale down below, but anybody who asks for specific examples of how Ben helps me win games, just watch the replays of these leagues that I'm uploading, because I think it's pretty clear that it's our best option as a 1-drop now. So after having pitched that island, I am going to go immediately for Dismember on this Scavenging Ooze. It eats 1 creature, goes up to 5 toughness, and then dies to Dismember. So this is a really tense spot here, because if the opponent rips a Lightning Bolt, I guess I can redirect to Spellskite, so that's a pretty good spot to be in with the Spellskite on the board. I got in with the Master because, I'm on chump block duty anyway with Ben's here, and if the opponent ripped a second piece of removal, he could kill Spellskite, kill Ben, and then I'd have no blockers. So I'm being pretty conservative here by leaving back both of the Benthic Biomancers. Actually, yeah, I chose not to attack with the one that could because I didn't want to be dead just to Tarmogoyf here. So Raging Ravine is pretty scary. It's got Trample, but Spreading Seas is right on time. I did have 4 of those left in the deck. Ben helped me dig deeper and rip that right on time. Let's see. Imagine I didn't dig with Ben. I believe that last draw would have been that island that I looted away, right? And what would that island have done for me in that spot? It would have been garbage. I would have lost another turn. The opponent would have gotten another attack in with Tarmogoyf. I would have had to chump again. And now I have a Master of Waves in hand. So getting 1 card deeper in your deck is really powerful. I don't know why I have to keep explaining this over and over again. Opponent's going to get in again here. And again, I'm playing extremely conservatively by not attacking with any of my creatures here. Liliana, I'm kind of hoping she doesn't make me discard here. It makes sense for the opponent. Now, he played his land. And so I was like, okay, he's going to make me discard. But then he made me sacrifice. And I was like, oof, okay, so Spellskite, you did your job. You lured out an early Assassin's Trophy and protected me from potential Lightning Bolt top decks for a little while. Now I know the opponent has no action because for some reason he played out his land. And the only out the opponent has is Damnation or Relic. Sorry, Damnation or Maelstrom Pulse against these Master of Waves. Now, I could play the Relic, activate it, just crack it, and make the Tarmogoyf blank as an attacker next turn. But there's no way I'm not playing this Master of Waves. So let's kill Liliana, jam Master of Waves, get 3 beefy elemental tokens, and play the Relic. Interestingly, the opponent gets in. Sort of hard to say whether that's correct or not in this spot. For those of you wondering, I thought a lot about whether I could reduce Tarmogoyf's toughness by getting rid of like some type out of my graveyard, but everything that I have is redundant. I've got 2 artifacts between AEther Vial and Spellskite. I've got 2 creatures. I've got 2 instants. I've got lands, and the opponent also has, redundant stuff. So no way that I'm going to make this into a 6 toughness, in which case I might choose to double block to try to kill it. But I just threw 1 elemental under the bus. Now I've got protection from Tarmogoyf in the form of Relic, which is also another card drawing effect. People have also been asking recently about Grafdigger's Cage and whether it should replace some of the spots that Relic takes currently. Since Grafdigger's Cage is really good not only against all of these Phoenix decks, but also against Collected Company decks. But Relic helps not just in extremely graveyard-oriented decks, but also just decks that get value from the graveyard, like Jund. AEther Vial was a really terrible draw there. It is time to get in with some of my creatures. I do have to leave back 2 elementals, just to play around anything the opponent could have. I could be more aggressive in attack, and then if they have removal for 1 elemental, I could, of course, crack the Relic and make the Tarmogoyf smaller. It's possible that I'm just playing a little bit too passively in this game. Another Raging Ravine is once again quite scary. Opponent now choosing not to get in. I don't have 12 on board. If I draw a Lord, it would be 6 + 6, so that would be 12. So if the opponent is holding a blank in hand, then attacking with the Tarmogoyf could be wrong. I did top deck a Lord. That's pretty cool. So let's play the Lord. I am drawing pretty poorly apart from that Lord that I ripped. So let's go ahead and get in with Island Walk. So I drew the Lord off of the Relic, and then for my turn I drew an Island. The previous turn I drew an AEther Vial. So I think the opponent just activated Raging Ravine here. And Tarmogoyf is just a 0/1. I guess they don't have any tricky instant speed stuff that would buff the Tarmogoyf. So a simple decision here to just double block and kill the Raging Ravine. Now if I single blocked, I could take 2, go down to 1, and potentially have a safer attack next turn, but I've got Island Walk online. The fact that the opponent didn't attack with Tarmogoyf made me think that they don't have any instant speed removal. Also possible that if they had like a bolt, if they had a bolt, I'd be dead. But if they have like a fatal push, they could have possibly killed one of the elementals so that the Raging Ravine would live and only take 3 damage. Alternatively, they could have let the Raging Ravine die and kill one of my Master of Waves, or the Fatal Push could have killed the Lord. All the while, they could be attacking with Tarmogoyf, since that instant speed effect would put an instant and a creature in the graveyard, making Tarmogoyf suddenly a 2/3, which is decent against any elemental blocks as 3/2s. So opponents signaling that they don't have the interaction. I draw another island. Let's go ahead and crack in with these 2 Master of Waves, hope that the opponent doesn't have it, and indeed they don't. So, as I mentioned, possible that I played a little bit too passively that game. You always need to tread a fine line between playing around what you can afford to play around and going for it. And I felt that, you know, Jund plays so much removal that if I overcommit to an attack, they could just remove my 2 blockers and then just win with Tarmogoyf. I didn't want to put myself in a position where that was a possibility. So, you know, I played conservatively, and we got there in a very conservative way, taking the opponent to exactly 0. I hope that this game, among others, demonstrated the power of Benthic Biomancer. I cannot overstate how valuable it is to get deeper and deeper into your library. Even if you only see islands on the top, you know, getting that island off the top of your deck and into the graveyard puts you 1 card deeper to drawing the things that you need, like Master of Waves and Spreading Seas to turn off Raging Ravines. Even in fast matchups, combo matchups, blue-red, Living End, you know, Benthic Biomancer is an all-star in that matchup. We saw that it did really, really well against mono-red Phoenix. These are really fast decks. Now, Ben does get sideboarded out sometimes. He tends to get boarded out in the matchups where we have so many good cards against a particular matchup that having an extra 1-drop who digs isn't really that necessary, since, you know, we're just going to have good stuff in our hand already. So we'd rather draw more of that good stuff, and in theory, I guess, less of Ben. Now, that might not be correct. I think we're all trying to still figure out how to play this card. I know some people are still trying to evaluate the card, and, you know, I'm here to help you guys get to a point where you can see that this is a card that we need to be playing 4 copies of. For me, it's as central at this point to Merfolk Trickster is, as Master of Waves is, potentially as central as the Lords are. It does so much for the deck, and I hope I've demonstrated that for you guys. So as always, please leave your thoughts down below. I love hearing your guys' comments and suggestions, observations, your own experience from your own matches. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And please take a moment and check out my Patreon page if you appreciate the content and would like to contribute $1 or $2. That would be amazing. So once again, thank you guys very, very much for tuning in. And please join me for the next video, where I'll be back with, I'm sure, more action featuring Benthic Biomancer. Bye, guys.